Welcome to the third part of solving the UGC paper for June 2014 exam. In this section, we will be moving from question number 30 onwards. As discussed previously, we will be continuing with the set X. So we will be discussing all the 15 questions in this series. The first question that we would be discussing is about the correct statement regarding the establishment of Central University and the major elements of Central University. So this was the question that was asked. Which of the following is correct about central universities? The first statement is Central University is established under the Act of Parliament, which is a very correct statement. The next statement talks about President of India as a visitor of the university. So it's very important to note that President of India is a visitor to all central universities in India. He has the power to nominate the members to the Executive Council and Executive Committee and Board of Management to all the central university. Besides this, President has some other powers. That is, he has to respect. He can make any amendments, additions, or reappeal the status of any of the universities. He has the power to suspend or disallow any ordinance. He can inquire into the affair of any universities, and he can resolve any dispute which arises between the selection committee and the executive councils. So these are some of the major functions that president does. This statement, or the fourth statement, is incorrect. President occasionally presides over the meeting of executive committee is an incorrect statement. Now let's move on to the next question. So this question, as we see, was on the importance of education in India, or from the section on education in India. The next question is from political science and an important question about Lokpal Bill. So Lokpal Bill is an important section even for December 2014 exam. The statement says India should have a very strong and powerful Lokpal. There are two arguments. One is it will in long eliminate the corruption and the bureaucracy, and second, it says that it would discourage honest officers from making quick decisions. Answer 1 is a strong statement, or if we say that it would eliminate corruption and bureaucracy, that is much important, or that supports the statement very well, rather than saying that it would discourage the honest officers from making quick decisions, because the decision-making power of any honest officer will not be determined whether there is a Lokpal at the center or not. Despite of the Lokpal, a person would perform or take the decisions honestly if he is an honest officer. This is not meant for honest officers, but meant to eliminate the corruption in the system. So we can say only statement 1 is strong in this case. Now the next question is on teaching aptitude. Teaching aptitude and research in UGC comprises a very important section. So which of the following is the best method of teaching? Now this is a very simple question to answer, because most of the students will feel lecture should be a good method to teach, but the answer is demonstration. Now what is the difference between lecture, discussion, narration and demonstration? Lecture is a kind of one way or dual way of interaction where, for example, if I am taking a lecture, I am speaking and most of the students are listening. Discussion is a kind of two-way communication where one can discuss various views for and against any issue. So you can talk about pros and cons of something. Narration is dictating something or just reading out what is written. While demonstration is something other than that. In demonstration, what I try to do, I try to experimentally explain something. For example, if I am taking a class for students of nursery or kindergarten, what I will be doing. If I want to teach them simple addition, I would bring 2 chocolates and say that if your friend gives you 1 more chocolate, what would happen? So I'm trying to explain a simple mathematical addition concept, which is depicted by means of chocolates or something that this child may be involved in. So this shows demonstration, and when you are demonstrating, it is something which you can say the student will best remember, or that would be in his memory for much longer duration rather than any other thing. So the next question talks about reading, which is again from unit first. So dyslexia is associated with. So the correct answer is dyslexia is a reading disorder. What happens in dyslexia is the fluency in the reading is not appropriate. So the person suffering from dyslexia will not be able to read the stuff properly. There would be incorrect comprehension, and we usually call it as a developmental reading disorder. So it occurs as a child develops, and it is resolved with time. The next question is again a theoretical question. So this section, most of the questions are theoretical based on your prior knowledge about things. So this question is theoretical as well as from the section of current affairs. So most of the students inquire about the type of questions that are asked in current affairs. So this is again a question on current affairs that is asked from the section on education. There was a previous question in the part 2 that we discussed, which was from current affairs on education. So this question, what it is important is, this question asks about e-content generation for undergraduate courses has been assigned to Ministry of Human Development, has been assigned by Ministry of Human Resource Development or MHRD 2. So the answer is CEC, Consortium for Educational Communication, is one of the inter-university centers which is being set up by UGC, and this setup has launched the e-content program for undergraduate courses. Initially, it was launched for a few subjects like botany, and now it has been expanded to other subjects like anthropology, English, Hindi, mathematics, photography. Then you have environmental studies and history. These are the subjects that have been recently covered in CEC. And because the number of courses have increased in CEC, this was in news in the month of February and March. The next question, as well, we can find out another trend from current affairs is most of the questions in June come from the month of February and March. So people ask a lot about the trend of questions in the months which are important from the point of view of current affairs. So this is an information about it. Now, which of the following is correct? Classroom communication is considered as, what would be the best answer for this? The answer would be cognitive. What does the word cognition means? We talk about ABC of psychology. A means affection, B means behavioral, and C means cognition. A is the affective component. That means you are emotionally linked to something. B is the behavioral, or your acts towards something. And C is the cognition, or the component that talks about understanding. So whenever we talk about classroom communication, the main emphasis on any classroom communication is whether you are able to understand a specific concept or not. So cognition or cognitive functions usually talk about your understanding towards something, and therefore classroom communication is considered as a cognitive method. The next question is again from teaching aptitude. This question talks about what are the signs of motivated teaching. So if I am taking a lecture, how can you recognize whether I am motivated to teach or not? So here are some of the elements that are being put up. Now these kind of questions are usually much more applicative and much more direct in knowledge. So if some teacher think that I am teaching good because the students are continuously taking notes, but that is not a reason for it. Some students might be taking notes just because the material is not available anywhere else, or something that you are teaching is unique, but that does not really show that the students are motivated in, or you are really motivated to teach. But if a student is asking questions in the class and you are able to solve those questions, that means the student is interested in the lecture and you are motivated to teach because you are trying to solve the questions for the students. A lot of teachers can be there who can just ignore the questions, or who can suppress the children not to ask the questions just because they do not know the answers or they do not want to study more. So that is something what UGC is trying to figure out, asking this question, that considering yourself as a teacher, if you are teaching, at what circumstances you would be really motivated to teach. So if you are able to answer the questions of the students and you are interested in that, that means you are really motivated and into teaching. Now next question is upon the research aptitude section. This is something the PhD scholars would answer it correctly, or those who had taken project in their masters would be able to answer it very accurately. In the thesis, figures and tables are included in. So usually the current pattern of thesis, there are various formats that you usually use, but that is the most popular method, that you include figure 1 with the text, and then you have table 1 that's again in the main text. And what you try to do is, while you are writing the text, you mention refer figure 1 for this detail and refer table 1 for this detail. So that means you are trying to include figures and tables within the text itself. 99% of the cases you do not put it towards the end, but in some cases, like if you are sending it to some journals or something, and there are colored images or something, they might ask you to take out the images separately so that they can append at the end. But usually this portion is not done in your main thesis work. In main thesis work, you do it by yourselves, so it is included with the text itself. Now, when you are trying to write a synopsis for your PhD or your research paper, you have a thesis statement. What does a thesis statement means? I cannot write a statement which is factual, because if it is already a factual statement, there is nothing I'm trying to prove about it. So it cannot be based on fact, observation, or universal truths or assertions, what is something rarely exists. A thesis statement can only exist in case of discussion, where there is a topic that is either controversial, or there are positives or negatives on it, or there is future research that needs to be done on it. Only on those statements, only on those topics you can give a thesis statement. If something is already proved, for example, if I say apple falls due to gravity, this is a fact. Or I can say this is a positive statement or an assertion. In these cases, I cannot do a thesis again, because this thesis has already been done and this has been proven as a fact or an assertion. So thesis statement can only be made where there are discussions or where there is a scope for a discussion. Now, Max Weber is a very important person in research methodology, and this question asks about the research approach that Max Weber used to understand how people create meanings in the natural settings. Now, in this question, what we are trying to understand is, the most important thing is the concept of paradigm. What is paradigm? Paradigm is a concept where we try to say that we are trying to include a whole lot of scenario into one thing. Okay, and when we talk about the shift in paradigm, that means we are changing our views from one form to another. For example, if I say my mentality is changing from a democratic setup to a republican setup, that means there is a paradigm shift. My ideologies are changing from a democratic view to a republican view. So this is something you are trying to explain by means of paradigm. So paradigm is something that you have that is native to you, and you have your mental structure based on that paradigm. So when we talk about paradigm, you have positive, negative, natural, and interpretative. So Max Weber talked about interpretative paradigm, that talks or that explains how people create meaning in a natural setting, or they try to interpret things. For example, if a person comes to my office and greets me nicely, okay, so my first thing would be, might be I know this person, have he been to office before, have I met him somewhere else? So I'm trying to interpret that phenomena, why he is talking to me so generously or so nicely, or I'm trying to create a perception about that person. So that is what an interpretative paradigm, where I'm trying to interpret that thing or give perceptions about that thing. So when you try to subjectively give perceptions about something, you are talking about interpretative paradigms, and that is where you give meaning to your natural settings, or you create meaning to something that already exists. The next question talks about, which of the following is a non-probability sampling? Now, when we talk about non-probability sampling, it is clearly classified into two parts, that is accidental and purposive. And since we have purposive as an option here, the answer would be purposive sampling. The next question we are discussing about the type of evaluation to assess a learning process that has a continuous feedback to the students during instruction. What does that mean? When I'm trying to give a continuous feedback, what is the best system? In a formative instructional method, what happens is a formative instructional process is both formal and informal, and in this process, what we try to do is teachers and students both use their knowledge to know whether they need to go along into a single direction. So we call it intended learning. That means teacher wants you to teach something and the student is really interested to know that thing. So when teacher and student use their knowledge to go towards a particular direction, we call it intended learning. And this intended learning helps you to gather knowledge, develop your response, and that response helps you to provide evidence to learning. So we call it a formative method of instruction. The next question is, research stream of immediate application is. Whenever we talk about any research, the research can be of various types. Of these, action research is the only research which talks about immediate implications, immediate application to any problem. So if I have a problem in hand, what I will be doing? I would be immediately solving that problem. And that immediate solution to any problem is known as action research. So it is a kind of process that is solving your problem progressively. So it's increasing day by day. And you have a community of practice that you are trying to imply. What does the word community of practice means? You have a group of practice methods that you are trying to apply to help solve that problem. So we call it community of practice that is usually applied in action research. Now the last question that we would be taking today is, who propounded the concept of paradigm? So this question is kind of based on theoretical knowledge. The answer is Thomas Kuhn. Now I'll be giving you a brief introduction about this. So Thomas Kuhn wrote a book that was known as Structure of Scientific Revolution. In his book, Structure of Scientific Revolution, he talked about the term paradigm. How does paradigm shifts and what is a shift in paradigm? He is also considered as a person who fathered the definition of paradigm, who gave the concept of paradigm shift, and he was the person who popularized this concept. So according to him, any scientific advancement that takes place occurs in series, and that series comes through a kind of intellectually violent revolutions that come one after the another. So it helps you to create a change in your way of thinking, as I discussed in the previous question, for example, from a democratic mindset to a republican mindset. So it's kind of shifting your ideologies or your thought process from one form to another. These were the set of questions that we discussed today. We will be completing this section in the next class, where we will be talking about the rest of the questions. The main focus in the next class would be on the reading comprehension section that we haven't touched so far, and the other questions would be related to numerical reasoning, numerical reasoning, and mathematical analysis. So the quantitative section and the reading comprehension, those two sections are left for the last class. Hope this section was interesting, and stay tuned for the next session. Good luck for your forthcoming exams in December.